So, welcome back to our first keynote of today. That was a quick jump, and I already have Julian here. But before I ask him how he's doing and going into everything, I would like to introduce him first. So, let me tell you a few words about Julian. He is the managing director of GermanZero, a foundation based in Berlin since 2019. And what I found online is that he is passionate about sharing his research knowledge from political science on the relationship between national identity and social actions. So that sounds very, very interesting. And proceeding this mission or vision in life, he not only managed to become one of the top 40 under 40 executives in Germany, but also strives with his team at GermanZero to bring a mission forward that Germany can become climate neutral until 2035. And I'm super happy to learn more. And welcome on stage, Julian. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much, Lara. I'm very excited and feel very privileged to be part here of the Climate Transformation Summit. And also, thank you so much for the introduction. I feel very kind of charmed by your amazing introduction. And I would just like to jump into my presentation as our time is super valuable, and I hope I can contribute a bit on how we can take action together to transform society and businesses to a sustainable path. And my take would be mainly to show a bit, let's say, take an overview perspective, following up on what you have started on, talking about what the problem is very briefly, because it's pretty obvious. Secondly, what the challenge is, in my view. And then thirdly, what possible solutions are for us as citizens, as entrepreneurs, as leaders of companies. So first of all,
very good for me. I would actually hide from stage so you have the full visibility. I'm gonna follow the chat, whatever comes in, and see you back in a bit. And excited to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you, Lara. So first of all, Lara has already perfectly explained what the problem is. By the way, the keynote from last year was elaborating perfectly well on the problem, so I will keep it very short. I mean, you all know this graphic, and this shows what the difference between a hot year and the climate crisis is. And you also have seen Lara's graph in a long perspective. So just to give you an idea, maybe in terms of heat waves, what the problem is. At the moment, we are on a course of 2.7 degrees for 2100. If we only comply with what is pledged within the context of the Paris Climate Agreement. The problem is we do not live up to those pledges at the moment. And we are currently clearly on a path more above 3 degrees in the worst case to 4. In this case, you would have massive heat waves making the area 1,000 kilometers north and south of the equator uninhabitable. As you might know that if you stay outside at a temperature higher than 40 degrees with a higher humidity than 60%, you will not survive longer than a couple of hours. And if somebody doubts that thing, I advise you to do a kind of a medically supervised sauna experience. So just do a steam sauna at 40 degrees and then figure out whether this is true or not. So this is a big problem, and we all know that there is a big challenge ahead. And one thing that we maybe also illustrates how fast we have to move is having a budget perspective. So mainly what we have as a challenge is using the remaining greenhouse gas budget wisely. And what you see here is how we have consumed that budget in the past. The red area on the left top shows you that we have used from the 51 to 2000 roughly 760 gigatons of CO2 equivalents. And in the only last 20 years, so from 2001 to 22, we have used a budget of 693 gigatons. So the same budget that we consumed previously over the course of 50 years. If we take the Paris Climate Agreement seriously, we have only 282 gigatons left that we can use, and that implies that we have to cut our greenhouse gas emissions by half within the 30s. So Lara referred to the crucial next 70 years. But it also means if we take the Paris Climate Agreement seriously, we have to become climate neutral by 2035, which is way earlier than most governments planned to achieve climate neutrality. And that also means that clearly we need compensation, but in addition to everything that we need to reduce. So technological innovation is key in any case, but it comes in addition to drastically increased path to net zero. Just to give you one example how this would look like for Germany, this is a classical case for an industrial or kind of an industrial country where most emissions have been caused historically. And what we see here is that at the moment, the ambition, which is seen as the residual in the dark blue area, is not sufficient to comply with the 1.5 degree limit. Moreover, we also, and you might know these graphs, we track the actual development of greenhouse gas emissions. And what we see is that even the insufficient ambitions of the pledges by, in this case, the federal German government, have not been complied with. So that means we have kind of a double level problem of ambition. The the targets that we have set are not sufficient to comply with the Paris Climate Agreement. And secondly, we even don't comply with these insufficient targets. And this is a picture that we see in most countries around the world. So this part was mainly about what the problem and the challenge is. Now I would like to talk a bit about solutions that I see from a public policy perspective, but also in regarding how we can foster cooperation with companies. My claim is that there are three types of challenges that we all face. One is regulation. Roughly 80% of the emissions are indirectly or directly caused by regulation. You might have noticed that if you're a business leader and you really try to get green energy, or you would like to reduce emissions in your facilities, or you would like to scale up your own energy supply system and are faced with drastic amounts of red tape. Secondly, another challenge is political. My organization also supports about 100 referendums at the local level. Lastly, and you might know this case, the referendum in Berlin. And what we saw there, that we received quite a few of no votes based on the informed decision that there is no clear opinion on that this is really necessary. So, for example, many citizens in Berlin voted against the referendum to become climate neutral by 2030, which is clearly very ambitious, because there were doubts in implementation and also doubts who would finance the costs. So, although regulation can have a big impact on answering questions on fairness and on generating support for more ambitious climate goals, At the same time, there are clearly challenges on getting society together and avoiding polarization on that topic. And thirdly, and this is why this Climate Transformation Summit and your businesses are so important, the third challenge is technology. Even if we implement all these policies, even if we manage to get everybody on board, or at least a critical majority, there are significant questions on scaling up technology in several fields. And there are also questions on logistics. And this is where even in a perfect framework that provides the basis for a sustainable economy, technology and innovation is so key. And this is why your work and this conference is also so important. So a short notice on who we are. So I'm representing an NGO that is non-partisan, generating solutions that are for free and non-profit. And we do three things. First, we design a regulation that is complying with the Paris Climate Agreement. Second, we are scaling up a citizens lobby as one of the elements that, in our view, is missing to really address the first and the second challenge, so the regulatory and the political challenge. And thirdly, we are building up a grassroots movement at the local level, the Local Zero network, which drives municipalities to net zero. We are 30 full-time employees, and we empower 1,200 volunteers at the moment. And finally, what is important to us is that we always have a constructive, impact-driven approach. That means if we criticize something, we always have a solution. So mission one, how do we challenge regulation? The main problem is not necessarily that politicians are bad people, but that they do not know how to address regulation that provides a systemic approach on the climate crisis. Our political systems are usually mainly shaped in the 19th century and have clear sectors. That means that there's a spokesperson for transportation. There's a person who is responsible for social affairs. And there might be another politician who is responsible for agriculture. The problem is it is all interrelated. And this is where politics and regulation gets at a level where it doesn't really systemically react in the right way. And this is why we designed a 1.5-degree legislative package that can, in significant elements, be also applied to other countries. We're currently working on a database that makes this possible. And it looks a bit like a house. So what it basically has, and Lara was referring to that, is that the core of the house is the transformation to renewable energy. At the moment, 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions is caused by the energy sector. And this is heavily important for businesses, for the industry, but obviously also for transportation if we transform a transformation mainly to electrically powered vehicles. So on that level, we have important policies in the industry level. For example, lobbying for policies that enable circular economy, but also other elements such as a carbon border tax adjustment. There's a big regulatory package and challenge in the building sector that facilitates sustainable buildings, but also to improve conditions of existing buildings. Moreover, there's the transportation sector. It's maybe not a surprise that this is a sector where we see at the moment the least movement, and where, in this case, Germany is blocking progressive policies at the European level as the only country. And then there's obviously agriculture, which is an important point. We have 4 other layers that interrelate with this regulation. One is carbon pricing, which becomes increasingly important at the European level, where we have developed an approach that combines a tax approach, but also a trading system, and combines the best worlds of both. And we're lobbying this approach at the European and federal level. There is a bit of movement, unfortunately not enough. We see, for example, that we have a trading system that is not really a market, where we have too many fixed prices, too many free certificates. That's clearly something that needs to change, and where we need a strong lobby, also from the industry, in the sense of demanding a framework in which it is possible to transform supply chains and businesses. Another important element is, at least in Germany, is kind of the basic law and also the so-called climate protection law, which defines the ambition level. So most debates are usually about these targets, but as you might know, the targets are not really the critical element, but more the question of how to implement those targets. So the lower elements, the foundation of the house. And another element which is clearly important is sustainable finance. So there are massive investments involved, and a big question is on how to finance the transformation. So sustainable finance is also the basis of the regulatory transformation. A second element is, well, it's nice to suggest these things, but we all know how politics works. There are a lot of interests in organized lobbies, so we set up a citizens lobby. We train, and this is the second pillar, we train citizens to address their representatives with drafts, so that they are forced, or at least have to explain how they vote in parliament. This image, for example, is a visualization of all the members of parliament who have received the legislative package. So at the moment, we are developing and improving our customer relationship management, which will be accessible to citizens. And it will show which politician has been addressed with which request. And we will match that with how they actually behave and vote in parliament. So a big element in our view, of the political transformation is visualizing the interaction between citizens and politicians. This is also critical for the massive amount of NGOs in the field. You all might know the movie The Life of Brian by Monty Python. And this is what I remember when I got into the nonprofit world. So we have hundreds of organizations who usually agree on 95% and what needs to be done. And still there's a lot of fragmentation. And that's not because people are egoistic or not willing to cooperate, but because it is so tough to find the right elements of the right level of cooperation. We have established certain events. We have demonstrations, for example, by Fridays for Future. We have also the so-called Climate Democracy Day that we have launched 2 weeks ago, bringing together 1,000 citizens with 150 organizations, talking with more than 10% of the federal parliament. But there are hundreds of small NGOs that interact with politics, but they don't share their knowledge what these politicians have said. And this is why we are creating this CRM and visualize their output, so that we can create synergies on those talks. At the moment, we have more than 100 local groups who are active in the field. And we also copy all dirty tricks from fossil lobbies, like climate pledges before elections, so that we can hold politicians accountable. That means we are using the elements in democracies that have big influence politically to become to actually transform the biggest lobby that exists in democracies, the citizen lobby, into a powerful organization. Another thing, and this is an outlook for the next years, is we are building an impact board. So what we have developed with the 1.5 degree legislative package is actually a very sophisticated selection approach with hundreds of experts based on all solutions that exist, roughly 5,000. The problem is sometimes people don't agree on everything, so they want to choose which possibilities exist to become climate neutral. And this is why we will set up a database that links not only the positive and negative elements of each policy in a database, but also links will connect it with the leading experts and equally important with responsible politicians. So in a couple of months, it will be possible for you to see which policies have been implemented, which haven't, and which policies that have not been implemented are the most effective, are fair from the standpoint that they profit lower household income households with lower incomes more than richer households, and are also open to technological innovation. This, in my view, will be a game changer because it shows you where do we stand and what are the solutions that you can take the solution paths to stay within the budget that we are facing to comply with the Paris Climate Agreement. So in the future, there will be a tool that could also be addressed to challenges like biodiversity that shows you where do we stand and where do we have to go and what needs to be done to do that. The local network also uses IT tools that you can use to generate your own climate vision. And we have lobbied already successfully in more than 36 actually municipalities for a binding referendum that now means that we have more than 3.5 million citizens in Germany within a period of 2.5 years that now live in a municipality that has voted on becoming climate neutral by 2035 at the latest. And that shows that resistance is lower at the local level, and also the possibility or the willingness to cooperate is higher. And that is partly because it is fun. It is fun to transform your own municipality into a climate neutral municipality because you discover new connections with your neighbors. You rediscover your place. You are shaping that place. And that also generates a sense of self-efficacy that is key and, in my view, crucial to accelerate the change to net zero. Ingo, for example, maybe the guy with the most German name in the country, thinks that he feels part of a movement if we act together. And the great thing is, and this is really something that is a social innovation that it shouldn't be underestimated. If citizens talk with their neighbors what they want, it is a totally new game if politicians argue for we should become climate neutral, because there's always a systematic difference between a member of parliament and a citizen, because the member of parliament is representing more people, has more information, and also wants to get reelected. But if I'm kind of honest with my neighbor and claim, listen, this will be a tough job, but let's do this together. Let's try to transform this village. It's actually fun. And please don't tell me anymore you support the climate movement if you're against solar panels on our roof or against solar panels on our church that you even won't see if you stand in front of it. So that means things change, the discourse changes, and I think that's key. Now, businesses obviously play the most important role when it comes to facing the technological challenge. And hopefully, this will become even easier if the political will is increasingly there and if regulation makes it easier to transform your own business or create sustainable businesses. And at the moment, we are cooperating with 60 companies. that become also lobbyists for a good future. And I think, and this is another call to action, so to speak, although we offer that network, it is more important to rethink, in my view, in general, your role as entrepreneurs. I know that many are doing that already, but what we have seen in the past is that a lot has been invested on how can a company become climate neutral, which is also done by the Climate Choice and super important work. But I think, and the transport sector shows that very clearly, we need businesses, we need the private sector on board as lobbyists for a good future, which will change the game. It is important that citizens promote their interests, but it is also important, in my view, that companies as institutions speak up to lobby for regulation that doesn't only directly influence them, but also influences the overall framework for a green economy. So my call to action here is come on board as a lobbyist for a good future, really embrace corporate political responsibility, and support demands that go beyond your own industry. Industries and companies are heavily important and are a key element in the transformation. This is why this summit is so important. I believe it is also very important that we basically get in the direction that is written down here. We have policies that are developed by experts, that are formulated by lawyers, evaluated by citizens, by representative councils. So they are democratically supported by a representative sample of citizens. But this becomes even more relevant in politics if these policies are also supported by entrepreneurs. As those at the moment, those political forces who are heavily lobbying against an accelerated path to net zero usually do so in the name of the economy. And this is why it is so important for all of us as entrepreneurs or businessmen and women to speak up that green economy is in the best interest of all of us and of new business models, as the European Union is the biggest market in the world. And if we become climate neutral faster, we set the standards, and this is the biggest business case in the history of the European Union. These are some of the examples that we demand, but this shouldn't be the main focus. Obviously, I'm happy to share thoughts with you and to talk about what we actually demand. But having said that, I thank you so much for your attention. I hope I have kind of provided a bit of an view on what is kind of the policy overview, what are the three challenges from a regulatory, a political, and a technological point of view, and how businesses can become part of an amazing future. Thank you so much. And have an amazing time at the Climate Transformation Summit.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. There are a lot of emojis flying in, so I trust you see them and you take it as your virtual applause. Thanks a lot for, I think I never heard so often the word lobbying connected to climate transformation. So that's amazing, taking that political work forward and also providing us today maybe a framework of the understanding which kind of work is also done on that side and needed and how companies can become active. And I think what I take out is also this word, if I didn't got it wrong, but that you are bringing forward 5,000 different solutions, lobbying on them. So I feel that's a quite good one. I think Julian is still a little bit around, so you can take the chance to send him a personal message and maybe even meet in the lobby if you want to have a quick conversation. And with everyone else, I take you over to the main stage where we go even deeper into the political settings and how companies have to react to it. And I thank you so much, Julian, for these insights and enjoy the rest, I would say.
Thank you so much, Lara, for having me, and all the best for the conference.
Thank you.